and welcome to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. We're brought to you every week by our sponsors tgstore.co.uk.
The home of Gore Bike Wear, Gore Running Wear and Aquasphere wetsuits. You can get 10% off with the code Oxygenaddict10, and you can win a Gore Bike or a Gore Run Jacket at tgstore.co.uk/oxygenaddict.
PrecisionHydration.com.
Leaders in triathlete sweat testing and hydration with multi-strength electrolytes that match how you sweat. There's a 15% off with the code Oxygenaddict15.
And Team Oxygen Addict,
which offers event-specific training plans, coaching guidance from Coach Rob Wilby.
Hello.
And supportive teammates in a private Facebook group.
And welcome to the show, Hels. How on earth are you today? It's lovely to speak to you on this fine morning and lots of racing to talk about, hey?
I know, it is. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent, thank you very much. And I'm very excited about the big races that have gone on this weekend for sure. Shall we jump straight in and go straight into our results this week?
We could try doing that, Rob. Yeah, so results this week brought to you by TG Store, our friends over there. Rob, guess what? I actually used my jacket.
Really? You got out in the old rain jacket, have you, at last?
Finally. I think I've had it for about 6 months. And
I think everybody else in the world is quite happy about the fact you haven't had to get out in your rain jacket, Hels.
Well, I was quite happy, really, that I didn't have to get out in it for so long, and I managed to avoid it. But I did my annual drowned rat ride. And
did you really? Was it just hideous?
Well, I think we might have actually spent longer in the cafe.
Is that right?
Yeah, that is right.
How did the jacket perform? Which one was it? Which one did you have on?
So it's the Power GT jacket. So it's the one I had in Italy, but just didn't have to use. And
ultralight, carried around Italy.
And then used in Cheshire.
Nice.
Oh my God, it did amazingly. So on the way out to the cafe, it was just drizzle. And then on the way back from the cafe, it just was one of those horrible, heavy rain showers.
Proper summer rainstorm, was it?
I had to wring out my gloves and my socks when I got home. That's how wet it was. But on top, I was pretty dry, thanks to my lovely jacket. So yeah, go and check it out. It was the Power Lady jacket that I had on. And yeah, great piece of kit, I can now tell you.
Love it. So go and check it out at tgstore.co.uk. And don't forget, you get 10% off with the code Oxygenaddict10. There is no finer rain jacket, in our opinion, than Gore-Tex. So get out there and check it out. Right, let's leap into the results from this week. We are starting off with a report from Edinburgh 70.3, aren't we?
We are, because Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast listener Stephen Whiston has sent us a little report. So we'll come on to the results shortly. But first of all, let's hear from Stephen about the race in general, because it was the first one, and what he thought about it. And then we'll go on to the pro results. So here we go. Stephen, thank you very much for sending us this.
Hi, Oxygenaddict Podcast. This is Stephen Whiston from the Mid-Argyll Triathlon and Cycle Club. This is the first Ironman in Scotland, and when announced in December, it became my A race for the year. And for our small club on the west coast of Scotland, a number of us took up the challenge with 4 individuals, and we put 4 relay teams in as well. I'm an experienced triathlete of 20 years, with 1 Ironman and 4 17.3s under my belt, but this was undoubtedly the toughest triathlon I've ever done. The swim was shortened to 950 metres on the day of the race because of the sea state. Huge swells and breakers, and I have to be honest, I really struggled to cope with the conditions. I recorded a woeful 34 minutes for 950 metres. There were a good few number of DNFs on the swim course, and the canoe and rescue boats did a superb job, but there were a vast majority of the triathletes took on the challenge and got through it and loved it. All of us commenting that it was a tough swim, but well worth it. I knew the bike course was lumpy, 3,200 feet of climbing expected through the East Lothian and Edinburgh countryside, with a climb and a circuit of Edinburgh's volcano, for those who know it, Arthur's Seat, before T2. However, to get to that point, we also had to cope with 3/4 of the bike route into what was a westerly headwind of between 16 and 18 miles an hour, with gusts up to 30 and 40 occasionally. I've got to admit, I love this tough bike course. It was superbly marshalled on closed roads, with the banks of supporters in the villages, and in particular what's been termed the Gifford Loop was a real tester for climbing and technical descending, and I know a number of folk love doing that. The run course was 3 laps, predominantly road, with a unique loop, which I'll come to. Starting out from T2, we're onto closed roads below Arthur's Seat, so consequently, as you can expect, that meant we had a fair amount of climbing to do up the road about half a mile before heading down to a turn point and back into what was the Innocent Tunnel loop. This is a former railway tunnel of about a third of a mile in length. It was really atmospheric, with runners heading up and runners heading down, the halogen lamps and music and support. Back out, it was returned to the start point. And as I say, there were 3 laps in totals, and they were superbly supported by 3 aid stations with marshals and volunteers from local triathlon clubs. 13 miles completed and 1,000 feet of climbing later, you get obviously the great finish through the iconic Ironman chute. My personal race verdict was that this was a superb inaugural Ironman race in Scotland and one right up there for a real testing day. The sea conditions were not that unusual, I understand, from locals, and this may deter folk, but let's be clear, 1,500 of us did it, and 25% of the field were newbies to the distance. So, you can cope with it with the right practice and preparation. Would I recommend it? Yes. Would I do it again? Maybe ask me in a week when the old quads, backs and glutes have recovered sufficiently.
Perfect little report there from Steve and Rob.
Brilliant. Nice one. Thanks for doing that, mate. That's awesome.
And it sounds like a toughie, doesn't it? Real
does.
toughie. So, yeah, he sent us a video through as well, so we'll try to put that up on Twitter later. And it did look, just conditions, tough as. And then he was saying there with the course, like really, really windy on the bike. And then even Lucy Gossage said that, the hardest run course of any 70.3 anywhere. So certainly, if you want to test yourself, then Edinburgh could be a good one to stick on your to-do list.
It does sound like it's a place to go, doesn't it? There's not a centimetre of flat on that run course, I don't think.
No.
I remember going and running up and around, what's it called? Arthur's Seat. I remember going and doing that at New Year when we stayed up there, and my quad's cramping on the way back down, and I had to spend a bit of time walking backwards to try and get down. I was like, I don't know whether it's what's caused this. My legs have completely locked. I've never experienced anything like it at all before or since. So I hope no one else had that same problem. But yeah, it's tough up there.
Yeah, and Rob, that was without a swim and a bike beforehand.
Yes, well, probably for the best for me, I
think. So let's go over then. Let's start with the women's race because we had basically 2 GB women coming home in 1 and 2, and another win for Emma Pallant. So, Rob, Emma is she's smashing it this year. It's her 6th.
She's dominating 70.3s, isn't she?
Yeah, 6th win of the year, so it'll be...
Wow.
Yeah, brilliant. I can't wait for Chattanooga.
Yeah, it's she's definitely put herself on the map, hasn't she? And to see her go head-to-head with Holly Lawrence, I think is going to be great racing, especially because Emma's weapon, it was always the run, but I mean... What did she run on this course? Was it 1:21, did I read?
Yeah, fastest run split, 1:21.
That's nuts. Great effort.
Yeah. So Emma, I think, came out the swim in the Swee was reduced to 950 metres because of those choppy, horrible, windy conditions. So
I think it wasn't that warm either.
Oh, no.
Something tells me it wasn't that warm, having swum in the North Sea a few times.
So she came out of the water 2.5 minutes down, and then she did a second best bike split in 2:40, and then got that win with the women's fastest of the day, 1:21. Lucy Gossage had a brilliant race as well, just 3:15 behind Emma, and then Sarah True, the ITU athlete, was third, 8.5 minutes back from Emma Pallant. So great field there in the women's race. And also, Rob,
we've got to give a shout out to Sarah True, because she put nearly 2 minutes into the entire women's field in a 950 metre swim. So that's pretty impressive racing. And I think it was Alice Hector was second out of the water as well, do you remember we had Alice on the show right back in the early days, didn't we? It's great to see her racing well again. Nice one, Alice, well done.
And a shout out to Ellie Hairsign as well. Good to see Ellie back on the results sheets, because I know she's had a big few injuries, hasn't she, over the past year or two. So well done, Ellie. Sarah True, she was racing in, she did Mont Tremblant last weekend in Canada, didn't she? So fantastic.
Not much of a jet lag difference there then.
and great to see her sort of mixing it up as well, Rob, having concentrated on the Olympic stuff over the past couple of years. So yeah, awesome stuff from the women's results there. Now I'd say David McNamee will be pretty gutted, and he did actually say that, because he would have gone into this race as pretty much one of the favourites to take the win, but sadly he punctured 2k into the bike, and he said, home race and I puncture after 2k, bollocks. So unlucky to David McNamee.
Apologies to anybody listening in the car with children.
Sorry, yes. Bad. Wrist slaps.
It's okay. It's live. David was frustrated and Helen's simply reporting.
Correct. But Rob, the name that we mentioned earlier in a couple of episodes ago, Elliot Smales, GB. Yeah, another great performance from him. He was first out the water, I think just ahead of Harry Wiltshire. So fantastic, and he actually ended up coming fourth. So definitely Elliot is one to keep our eyes on. The race was won by Andreas Rejla in 3:55 ahead of Alessandro De Gasperi of Italy in 4:02, and then Ivan Jarige of France, just about 45 seconds further back. And then Elliot Smales fourth, Fraser Cartmel fifth. So some great performances there. And Rob, I think it was a very tough course, but one that I'd say gritty, and everyone seemed to feel
enjoyed the natural habitat of Scotland on the way around. What a shame we didn't get a chance to see Andreas Freyler going head to head
with McNamee.
Because it looks like, 3:55 is a solid time in any course, but mind you, it was a short swim, wasn't it? So Andreas Freyler's clearly in good form again, which is great. So maybe we'll get to see them race each other at the World Champs. That'd be good, that'd be a good race, wouldn't it? Yeah, if he's back in form, he's another good runner. Yeah. So good stuff.
Should we move on to Austria?
Yeah. Oh well, I always love Austria, don't I, Hells? I think it's probably, although it isn't the European Championships, and there's a lot of very good people racing there in Frankfurt next weekend. Austria it's just renowned by people as being, in inverted commas, the best race to do in Europe, isn't it? That and Challenge Roth. Challenge Roth. I was going to say Roth, but Challenge Roth are known as being the best races. And people I know who've raced Kona have said, look, there's nothing compares to Ironman Austria. So it's great to see the wonderful Jan Frodeno racing at Ironman Austria. See what he could do there, hey? Yeah.
So he's obviously validated now his Kona slot. And so I think there were rumours, was he going to be breaking that course record, but perhaps conditions weren't quite perfect, and I don't know what. Obviously he's in good shape, Rob, but he wasn't. It was a 10th fastest in Ironman Austria history.
It didn't look blazing fast on the bike, did it? I managed to sneak in and follow along online a little bit, and when I think he did 4:18 from memory on the bike, and I was like, oh, okay. Which made me think, like you said initially, maybe, I know it sounds ridiculous to say someone riding at 42k an hour or whatever that is not like killing it, but I really thought if he turned on the afterburners, he might be down in the low 4 hours again. But nobody else, everyone, the gap to all his competitors was kind of where I expected it to be. So maybe that's how fast the course is compared to Roth. Maybe the other athletes weren't on it either, because I think he came off the bike with 13 or 14 minutes over athletes like Nico Lanos. So he definitely wasn't hanging around, was he?
No, wasn't hanging around. But
he ran a 2:46 marathon. So, before people start going, oh, well, he just turned up to validate. That's
no,
still
he didn't.
He did not.
He did not definitely just turn up to validate. In terms of course record, he was just like 11 minutes 22 seconds behind that course record, which was set by Marino van Honecker in 2015. So still a blinking decently
And most of that would have been on the
motoring
bike,
time.
wouldn't it? I think Marino's running the low 240s, but I remember him putting some blazing fast bike times out. He rode like a 410 or something there. So, but that being said, Marino made that was his mission, wasn't it? He used to go out there and train on the course, and there were these stories of him practicing the descents on the bike course at ridiculous speed. So maybe that's where the difference is, if he was really on it on the technical part of the course. But I mean, hats off to Frodeno. To go sub 8 is, I mean, we don't even blink at that anymore, but that's a very, very fast time, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's great. So Kona it is for Frodeno. Job done. So he took the win in 7:57 ahead of Enrico Llanos of Spain in 8:12 and Viktor Zemastev of Ukraine in 8:17. And then, Rob, the women's race, that was pretty cool to follow, because Michelle Vesterby of Denmark led for massive, massive chunks, but then it really got into a great encounter on the run. And eventually, Michelle Vesterby ended up in third, and it was Eva Vuti who was running her way through the field, and Corinne Abraham as well. So it really did turn into a sort of thrilling thing to follow. So Eva Vuti got the win in 9:06, and Rob, again, she's a new mum, a bit like Rachel Joyce. She's got I think a child under 1, so fantastic from her to come back and do that. Yeah,
that's incredible, isn't it?
Corinne Abraham just 2 minutes out of that, second in 9:08, so fantastic to see Corinne up there again. And then Michelle Vesterby third in 9:16. So yeah, absolutely awesome there. And I think Eva Vuti...
It looks like they absolutely smashed each other, doesn't it? It looks like people just detonated over the last 5 kilometres. Vuti hanging up for the win. But I think there was 45 seconds between her and Abraham with 5k to go. And Vesterby was only 5 minutes down. And then at the finish, I think she won by nearly 2 minutes, and Vesterby lost another 5 minutes over the last 5k. So it just goes to show how hard she must have been pushing herself to detonate like that over the last 5k, huh?
Yeah. So Vuti did
all know how that feels.
Oh god, 2:57 marathon. Abraham did a 3:03.
Yeah.
And then Vesterby did a 3:17.
Do you know, we should try and get Corinne Abraham back on the show. We had it all lined up, do you remember? And I kept trying to interview her, and the software kept failing. She was so patient, bless her. So Corinne, if you're there, we're going to get you back on the show sometime soon, hopefully, if you can deal with seeing my stupid face on Skype 15 times and going, I'm so sorry, it doesn't work. We'll get her back on. So she's definitely over those injury problems, isn't she? 9:08 on that course is fantastic.
Rob, there's one other result that we need to talk about, which was the outlaw half at Holcombe.
Yeah, now tell me about what happened down there then. It looks like there's some seriously fast racing, huh?
Yes, because, we had a course record at Outlaw Half Nottingham by Mark Threlfall.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, well, he wasn't racing at Holcombe, but Craig Twigg was, and he got a new course record in 4:09, so he would have got a nice little check for that. So, yeah, Robert,
good stuff.
It's kind of cool, because he's mid-40s, so to do that, I think, age 45?
I think he's 45, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
That just goes to show, man. Craig Twigg's been at the very top of age group triathlon and nudging on the realms of the pro rank kind of results, hasn't he, for years? And it's fantastic to see him put out what's arguably one of his best results at 45, isn't it? Well done, Craig.
Yeah. So he got the win ahead of Neil Eddy in 4:10 and then Michael Birchmore in 4:11. So really close racing there. And he said afterwards, so stoked to take the win and break the course record today at the Holcombe Half. Victory was even sweeter with my teammate Debbie Moore taking the women's victory. And then he says, congratulations to everyone who took part. Another ripper of an event put on by the OSB events team. Matt Bottrell in that race, Rob, was 10th, and he said, really happy with that. Solid racing. He said, what a way to celebrate my 40th. But Craig Twigg is my new hero, 45 and smashed it. #machine.
Oh, there you go, Botty. You've got another 5 years, man. 5 years till you peak. Forget that time trialing stuff. Let's see what you can do in 5 more years, mate.
On the women's side of things, Rob, Debbie Moore got the win in 4:42. Emma Deary, another good result for her, 4:44. And then the amazing Jill Fullen, third in 4:48.
And the men's results, Craig Twigg took it out in 4:09, Neil Eddy in 4:10, and Michael Birchmore in 4:11. So close racing at the front of the men's race too.
I think so, and loads of good feedback again for that race from the Outlaw team. So, yeah, keep your eyes peeled for early bird entries and that kind of thing opening for their stuff next year, because I really enjoyed Outlaw Half Nottingham. So definitely,
put themselves on the map, haven't they? Let's get some international listeners over to race the Outlaw events. Get yourselves over here, guys. That'd be some good racing for you to experience Great Britain if you don't want to do a branded event.
Defo. Rob, should we move on?
Let's jump in to our interview of the week, shall we? Our interview of the week is brought to us by PrecisionHydration.com.
Yep, who are leaders in triathlete sweat testing, and of course you can get 15% off with the code Oxygenaddict15. And don't forget, we're going to extend this slightly. What we really want to do, and what Precision Hydration wants to do, is answer any queries you might have about hydration, about sweating. So get in touch with them. You can email Dave at dc@precisionhydration.com, or you can tweet them. They're at the Sweat Experts. So any questions you have, and then we will answer them in a special chunk on a future show.
And if you're a new listener and you've not heard bits and bobs from them before, check back in our archives. We've got a great interview with Andy Below from Precision Hydration. And the reason that we push these guys so much isn't just that they're a sponsor. If you're racing long distance, and by that we mean 70.3 or Ironman, it's really critical that you keep your electrolyte levels at the correct level, because you're going to end up with cramp, or you can even end up with a situation called hypernatremia, which can be life-threatening. So it isn't one of these things where when you were a kid and you were playing football, you were told it's important to keep drinking electrolytes. It's absolutely essential for when you're racing long distance, especially in the heat. So get back and check out Andy's interview on that. And then if you've got any questions about the kind of levels of electrolytes you need to be taking in during racing, you can get your answers from them. They've even got, I think, a kind of questionnaire online on their website that you can take that will help guide you towards what kind of level of electrolytes you need without even having to take the proper sweat test. So get over there and check it out at precisionhydration.com.
Hey, so Rob, this week's interview of the week is with Brad Williams, who he does happen to be at Precision Hydration. He works with one of them
as well.
But that wasn't the reason that we got him on, and it's really, really interesting actually talking to Brad. He served in the US Air Force for 10 years, from like 2004 through to 2014. He spent a lot of time overseas, but gradually he got into triathlon during that time, and in 2012 he was like the Air Force Athlete of the Year, so he was pretty decent. And 2017, I believe, is his third year as a pro. Now he's not like your Jan Frodeno, he is not raking in the money, okay? But and this is why it's so cool listening to him about why he has decided to go down the pro ranks and get his pro license, and how he manages to make a living from it. And he has written a blog which I really, really urge you to check out on his website, which is www.bw-try.com, and it says where the rubber meets the road, the financials of a pro triathlete year 2, and we chat a lot about it in this interview. Brad Williams, hello and welcome to the Oxygen Addict Triathlon Podcast. How are you?
Good, Helen, thank you.
The big thing which I was like, I need to get him on, is basically what we're going to cover in this podcast is the reality of turning pro and actually, because you've been publishing a lot of like your finances basically for the past 2 years, and it, I think, gives a bit of a different insight than what people might assume.
Yeah, I mean, the whole reason behind doing the finance thing was in 2013. I had kind of had an idea. It was my first year back in the States, and I had an idea that I may want to race pro in the future, and I wanted to really know like what it would take to race from a financial standpoint. So in 2013, I had come back to the U.S. from being stationed overseas in the military, and I just tracked everything, and I think it was 13,000 or something at the end of 2013, and it gave me a good idea. I had raced around the country in the U.S. mainly, no international races, but it was a good schedule of what I would consider what a domestic pro would do in the U.S. in a year, and it just gave me that number of okay, that's what I need to be able to make, and plus some to be able to live if I want to do this in the future.
So how long were you an age grouper for then?
Oh gosh, I started racing in 2008, was my first ever triathlon, with no background in any of the sports. So basically from couch potato to sprint triathlon was how I started. I wasn't swimming, biking, or running. I grew up playing football and basketball in high school, and by playing, I normally sat on the bench and clapped my hands for everybody else. So I was never like known as an athlete per se. Like if there was the yearbook question, like who's most likely to be the professional athlete, I was not the choice. I probably would have been selected as least likely.
So I take it you did your first triathlon, and like many people, you got the bug straight away?
Yeah, no, very, very much so right away. I kind of raced very little training the rest of 2008, and it was a lot of racing. Looking back on it, I was very, very novice and stupid, to say the least. I started doing an Olympic. I did a couple or 2 sprints, then I did an Olympic distance. Then I did, I think, the 10K run. Maybe my first 10K run was in an Olympic distance, and then I signed up for a half marathon with only running 10K before. Couple days later, or no, a week later was a marathon that I got convinced to do, and my longest run was the marathon the week before. But I had this brilliant idea so Sunday I ran a half marathon, and then Thursday I had a brilliant idea that if I can run 18 miles, then I could surely get to 26. So on Thursday I ran 18, and then on the Sunday was the marathon.
It's like typical... Oh, I don't know, typical sort of panic training, not really having a clue, is it?
Then I got patient after that, and I did my first half Ironman in 2009.
Okay, so you gave yourself a little bit of time.
I waited until 2011 to do my first Ironman. So, I mean, which I think for doing 4 years of triathlon to doing your first Ironman in 4 years, that's pretty patient to today's standard. I think you'll see a lot of people do their first Ironman within the first 6 months or something crazy.
Absolutely. So just put it into a little bit of perspective for us. What time did you do that first marathon in, and what would your sort of half marathon time have been at that point, so back in 2008?
I think the first half marathon was 1:36.
Okay.
Which was, it was okay. I was like, okay, I was somewhat happy with that. And then the first marathon was 3:25.
That is not bad at all for a first marathon, a first half marathon. So you clearly had something in there, which, with quite a lot of finesse and a bit of training and guidance.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, you look at it from a running perspective, and 3:25 is not fast.
The 2011, then, your first Ironman. How did you do in that first Ironman in 2011? And by this point, were you doing a lot more training? Were you sort of living the life of a talented age grouper at that point?
I wouldn't use the term talented age grouper by 2011. I think I was still doing it, and I definitely had a very well balanced life in terms of Friday and Saturday nights. I was still partying, and that time I was back in Korea for my second time. I was more on track of like properly training. I got a coach for the first Ironman, still the coach I have today, Scott DeFilippis. So the first Ironman was Ironman Korea 2011, and I think it had 75 slots to Kona.
Okay.
Which ended up leaving 4 slots in the 25 to 29 age group, and I think I was 4th, so I got really lucky. And I just missed going under 10 hours, like 10 hours and 31 seconds. So a number that will haunt you for like, it's kind of like missing the sub 3 by 30 seconds or something. So
I guess you've put a bend to that now. So then obviously you went to Kona, and then did that really make you think, yep?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of an eye-opener race. We went in there with no expectations, just kind of experienced Kona, and I ended up running, I think I ran 3:11 or something there, which, I mean, in Korea I'd ran 3:40. So it was a massive PB day for me, and it was, but even then, I mean, I was 9:36, and I believe Chrissy won in 2011, and she probably went like 8:40 or 8:50 or something crazy, maybe even a little bit faster than that. And so that's like when you really are like, yeah, I'm okay at this, but I was still 25th or 30th in my age group or something, and I was an hour off of Chrissy's winning time. So that's kind of when you step back and look at it and you go, okay, I'm okay, but I'm not at the level that I need to be to race pro at that time.
Yeah. So what made the change then?
I mean, I've been chipping away since 2008, basically. I'm not taking massive chunks of time off at any one point. It's just been basically upping the training a little bit each year and slowly just chipping away at the times. And I think the biggest probably breakthrough year was 2013, I would say, but it was there wasn't anything that really changed. We just added a little bit more. I got a little bit more focused and a little bit more dedicated to the sport, basically. And that's just evolved each year, I guess.
And then was there one moment, Brad, when you were like, right, I've done the maths, I've got the results, I'm going to go for this pro card now?
Yeah, I think in late 2013, I had already really set my mind. I was set on getting out of the Air Force, and I didn't want to go get a grown-up job. I wanted to really see what I could do in triathlon, and so that was then 2014 became about just. I didn't think it would be a huge ask to get my pro card.
So you said that you met the criteria 3 times. Was it only on that 3rd time that you actually thought, yeah, right, this is okay now. I can do this. I will belong there.
Yeah, no, I mean, in 2013, I knew how crazy 2014 was going to be, or I thought I knew how crazy it was going to be, and I knew that wasn't the right time. And so once you qualify, you have a year from that qualification date to take your pro card, and so it expired basically because I think Vineman was in June or July, and so I wasn't going to be able to. In June or July of 2014, I didn't want to start racing professionally, so that's why I had to try to find another race to do it at. Yeah, in 2013, I knew I wanted to. I just wanted to wait and start doing it in 2015. And even then, I didn't really. I wrote I think a blog or two about why I'm not taking my pro card at the current time. And one of the best measurements that I've found, and I think some other people have echoed the thoughts, is if you're wanting to race professionally and you aren't consistently beating the pro women, that it's probably not the right time to do it. You probably still have a bit more growth you could do in the age group ranks before making the jump. I think that metric's a really good metric, because even if you're beating them, or if you're not beating them there, when you make the jump to the pro ranks, it becomes a really lonely race if you're not a strong swimmer or a strong biker. Even at this point, I mean, I'm losing anywhere from 2 to 4 minutes in the swim, and 2 is on a really good day when the river's going downstream. But even then, I'm still solo for so long. So I think it's a completely different mental aspect of racing that most age groupers aren't familiar with, because you're out there in no man's land. So yeah, that's one of the metrics that I was using at that time. And back in 2013, I was still kind of on the cusp of not beating the women, and especially over the full distance, I was almost there, kind of there, but not really. And I mean, on an off day, I was definitely not beating the women. I had to be on, and if I wasn't on, I was getting beaten by them. So I kind of knew that I wasn't going to be jumping from being a top age grouper to being a middle to top pro. I knew I was going to be kind of back of the pack, middle of the pack. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. I want to know though, do you almost miss the kind of like the camaraderie of age group racing? If you say that as a pro, especially initially, you spend a lot of time very solo on your own.
This is going to come off arrogant, but I swim so horribly that as an age grouper, I'd come out so far behind, and I guess it would depend on the type of race, but the rolling starts kind of improved that, and the wave starts, I was, as a male, 25 to 29, I was never one of the first age groups to go off. So I would swim so slow, and then there'd be so many people to pass on the bike that there was never really dynamic to ride with anybody. I was always riding through the field, and so then you're just weaving around people the whole time. But yeah, I mean, at least you have people to weave around. There's people to see in front of you and continuously pick off, to where now it's just there's maybe 1 or 2 people that you see, and then that's it. In Vietnam last month, it was, or was that earlier this month, I guess. I don't know, I lose track of time, I guess. Earlier this month, I think I passed 3 people in the first 15 miles, and then from mile 15 to 56, the only time I would see them is in the out and back section. I mean, I didn't have anybody in front of me, and it's a different aspect of racing, different dynamic, and hopefully that dynamic changes in the future for me. But for right now, that's kind of where it's been, and yeah, it's definitely more mental now, I think, than just pure physical.
So the financial side of life as a pro, is it harder than you thought it would be?
I don't know. I was financially savvy, I guess you could say, when I was in the Air Force, and me and my wife had both put away money into retirement and stuff, and we had some money in savings, and I left the Air Force debt free. So I'm not going to say like we're just wealthy rich outside of triathlon, but I'm not struggling to put food on the table at the end of the day, and I think that's a blessing. At the same time, maybe it's not great, because maybe it doesn't push me to go out and train harder or race harder, and maybe it's not an extra incentive. So I think it's a double-edged sword, but yeah, I mean, like we've talked about, I've been transparent with my financials, and I think the main reason I do that is for other people that are in the same shoes as I was in 3-4 years ago. They can kind of know what it takes, because obviously financials in pretty much all aspects of life, it's kind of taboo and people don't really talk about it. But I think in our sport, I think it needs to be talked about, because I don't think a lot of people understand where our sport's at financially. A lot of people, I think, just assume that because we're professional athletes, we are just raking in the cash, and that's far from it. I think when you look at the breakdown, there's only 40 or 50 pros that made over $40,000 in prize money last year.
And that's dollars, isn't it?
Yeah, that's U.S. dollars. I mean, the pound's pretty weak right now. Let's be honest, but it's U.S. dollars. So
how much did you make then in your first year as a pro? I've read your blog, and anyone should actually go and check out your website, because it is really, really interesting. What did you make then in your first year as a pro, or what did you not make?
In prize winnings, or just like overall income?
Overall, were you up or down for the year?
I was down like $285. And that's just in 2015, I broke it up. In 2016, 2015, I did a little bit different. In 2015, that included coaching, but it did not include, and coaching was a very small percentage that year. I just got started coaching, so it was only $3,000, somewhere around there. And I still had a part-time job. Then I was working for a nonprofit military organization back in the U.S., and I think off the top of my head, I made right around $20,000 U.S. So in 2015, I didn't include the part-time work, but I did include the coaching. And I also, in the expenses, I don't include our housing, and I don't include like the daily food. And that year, I did not include, I don't think I included my food like when I was traveling and stuff, because I took the approach of I'm going to have to eat no matter what. So I didn't want to include that in there. And so, yeah, I was down like $200 from that standpoint, which sadly, that's a really good year in professional triathlon, I think. And kind of to like why I don't include housing and life expenses. We wouldn't be living in Oxford if I was just a triathlete and my wife was working a normal job. And for those that aren't familiar with the UK, Oxford is, I think, one of the probably top 3 or top 5 places to live in terms of expenses. So for 970 square feet, we were paying £1,400, which when we moved here was $2,200 US. And yeah, so this isn't a place I would choose to live if I was doing this from more of like a financial side of things. But we're here because my wife's working on a PhD. Luckily, she's on a scholarship and she has a stipend. And so luckily for us, those revenue sources kind of offset our housing. So that's why I chose not to include it in there. So yeah.
There was an interesting thing about waiting for prize money, and that is a massive issue, isn't it, for professional triathletes? I think, what was the longest, 120-something days that you had to wait?
That was in 2016. It was 122 days. Or in 2015, it was 122 days. And to be noted, it was the same race organizer that paid in 2016 that took 151 days. So I knew going to this race that it was the same race organizer. It was a licensed event by Ironman. So the race organizer, my interpretation of it is the race organizer pays Ironman to use their branding, and then it's branded an Ironman race, but it's not Ironman that's necessarily putting on the race. And there's still some events out there that are like that. For the most part, it is Ironman owned events. But for me, knowing that it's an Ironman branded race, it gives me the security that I will get paid eventually. It's just a matter of when and who's going to pay it. Obviously, the race organizer is supposed to pay, but if they default, then at least you have Ironman there backing it with their name. So, but for the most part, it's anywhere from, I think the quickest I've been paid from a race was within 30 days, just under 30 days, and the longest is those 150, 120 day time frame. For the most part, it's 60 to 90 days, I think. So
which is still sort of, I don't know, in the normal world, you're going to get if you have a sort of contracted job, you pretty much know you're going to get paid every single month. So then that is a really interesting factor that you've got to take into account, that actually you might go and do a race, but you might not get anything back from it for like 3 months, 5 months.
Yeah, I think late 2016, I was closing up the financials, trying to close up the year and stuff and get things ready for tax purposes. And I think at one point I was owed like $8,000 between like a little bit of sponsor money, which was in contract to be paid at the end of the year. So I knew when it was going to come. But just knowing like I was owed $8,000 between prize money, travel stipends, some and bonus money. And it was just like, I just beat my head against the desk, like thinking, why do I continue to do this? Like when you've done the work and you're waiting to get paid. And to Ironman's point, like they say that they're waiting for drug testing results, which I can respect, but they don't test the whole field. So let's hold the people that you drug test, let's hold their money. What's going to happen to the people that you haven't drug tested? You aren't going to pay them less. If anything, you're going to pay them more, which is another point. And we found out recently that they don't end up paying you more if somebody pops positive. They end up keeping that money. So
really,
yeah, it's a loophole in the whole system that money ends up being used for the lawyer and fees to fight the cost. So yeah, I would have to go pull up the verbiage. Yeah, it's quite frustrating, because you would think if somebody tested positive ahead of you, that money would be, that athlete would owe Ironman the money, and Ironman would redistribute it evenly back down through the field how it was supposed to be paid out. But yeah, that's not the case. So
wow, so already you can be like feel really annoyed that someone has cheated essentially to get ahead of you, and not only that, it's almost like a double whack, isn't it? That, oh no, you don't even get the money, so you've already been cheated out of a place, and then you don't get paid for it.
Yeah,
that would frustrate me a lot. You mentioned sponsorship, Brad. How does sponsorship work? And do many brands sort of go, right, yep, you can come on board, and we'll give you money? I guess it doesn't work like that, does it?
No, I mean, unfortunately, I think our sport's in a recession in the industry side of things, and I think companies are hurting. There's not a lot of money, and I think they're rightfully so. Their marketing plans have changed, and you're seeing a lot of age group teams getting supported, or successful age groupers getting supported. I don't necessarily agree with it, but when you step back and look at it from a marketing standpoint, it makes sense. They're getting a lot of return on investment through those athletes. Those athletes are willing to pay a slight discount plus wear their logo and put all of their stuff all over social media. And some of those age group athletes have massive followings on social media. And then you look at guys coming into the sport like, I guess, I don't know who the people in the UK would be that are like famous athletes. Like in the US, there's the NASCAR drivers that are starting to like get into triathlon, or the F1 drivers. And so if you go give one of those guys a bike, like they have huge followings. So why would you give Brad Williams a bike when you can give one of those guys a bike? Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know. I think they're getting smarter in terms of that. And there are some companies that are completely supporting pros, but yeah, it's just hard, especially at my level. I would like to think I'm at the level to where I should be able to get some better deals than what I've gotten. I think I have a good story. I think I'm marketable. I think I have the well-rounded package. I don't just have I have decent race results, but I'm more than just race results. And I think that's what companies are starting to look for, and hopefully things start to change for me.
I guess then, in your situation, you don't rely on sponsors at all for income.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on retainer or salary by any company, and sadly, I think of my sponsorship money last year, which was the biggest income source behind my coaching and part-time work, was was sponsor dollars, but only I think $1,000 of the I think it was 13,000 in sponsorship, and only 1,000 of it was within the industry. So yeah, and that's a company that's not necessarily directly related to triathlon. It's just more or less a sports company. So it's not even a triathlon specific company. And that's just like direct cash, no commitments. No commitments in terms of like, I don't have to sell product and stuff for them. That's on a commission side of things. So commission is okay, but it's something that I'm trying to get away from. Like, I don't think my focus should have to be pushing product all the time. I will say that I am genuine in pushing the product that I do push, because it's stuff that most of the stuff that I use is stuff that I paid for before getting a sponsorship deal, and that's where I can take a stance and be like, look, I've been on Cervelo bikes since 2009. It was my first triathlon bike. Just because they're helping me out now doesn't mean I'm telling you to buy one because they're giving me bikes. I've paid for all of my bikes in some form. I think I've had 5 or 6 Cervelos, and 3 or 4 of them have been paid either on the used market or in full price. So, and that's the difference I think you get with me than with some of the top professionals that have always been given stuff, is they've never had to pay for something. So most of the stuff that I use, I've paid for in some form or another, and I'm giving you an honest opinion with it. Which I think some people still struggle to believe that I'd give you an honest opinion just because I'm making a little bit of money on the side on some stuff. But no, I genuinely use everything that I'm sponsored by, and I think that's part of me being transparent across the board.
And how much would you have earned last year from prize money?
Well, it was just after taxes and stuff. It was just over like 6,500 or 6,700, somewhere in there, I think. So it wasn't my travel expenses outweighed my race winnings.
And that's probably not that rare, is it?
Yeah, no, that's probably, I do travel a lot, and I do take risks in terms of travel. Like, I race in Asia a lot, which is pretty well known. When you talk about me, I mean, people, oh, he's racing in Asia a lot. But I think I was just adding it up a little while ago. Of the 22 races I've done as a pro, 9 of them have been in Asia, which it's a decent amount, more than most people, I think. But that's not a crazy amount. Like, I'm still racing in North America a bit, and I'm still racing in the UK and Europe a little bit. So, but yeah, travel is expensive. Pretty much on average, I think you could spend about $1,000 to fly to Asia. The good thing about Asia, though, is most races are taking care of you in some form of maybe a little bit of a travel stipend. Most of them are putting you up at a hotel, and some of them I don't pay for, like meals once I get there. They're catering meals, or they're putting on dinners and stuff. So when I look at it, I can go and race in Europe somewhere and spend $300 to $500 on a flight, and then have to pay for a hotel, and then travel within the local area or whatever else, meals when I'm there. It ends up being the exact same expense if I go and race in Asia. So why race at a race in Europe where there's 20, 30, 40 guys when I can go race a field of 10 to 15 guys and have better chances of maybe picking up a paycheck, having a better result on paper? Because at the end of the day, who remembers in 6 months from now how many people were at a race in Vietnam compared to the race in Oceanside or a race out here in Europe? So
some people might say it's a choice, why'd you bother? You could just go and get a normal job. And then I guess that's when it's a lifestyle decision as well, isn't it?
No, I mean, it's definitely a lifestyle choice. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more money to be made out there if I wanted it. But it's one of the reasons I left the Air Force is I stopped enjoying waking up every day. And like, if you're getting out of bed and you don't want to go to work, like, I'm sure a good majority of the population of the world don't enjoy getting up and wanting to go to work. But I was really struggling to get out of bed to go to work. And so, like, why am I going to continue to do this? Like, the money was okay. It wasn't great. I didn't enjoy the people I worked with at the time. Like, it just wasn't enjoyable. So I'd rather only make a couple $1,000s in profit a year and be able to put some money in retirement and kind of live, in my opinion, we live a pretty minimal lifestyle, rather than being miserable and having to wake up and clock in and clock out every day. Like, I don't know. Money's not everything in life. I think a lot of people lose sight of that, and I would rather do what I love for as long as I can. That desk job's always going to be waiting there for me. I mean, and that's the thing, is you never know what tomorrow is going to bring, and I could end up to where I can't do triathlon tomorrow, and I may have to get a desk job, or I may not be able to do even a desk job. And so you just, I think you take each day that you're given and do the best you can with it. And right now, triathlon is what brings me the most happiness, and it gives us an enjoyable lifestyle as a family, not necessarily from a financial standpoint, but me being able to have a flexible schedule and be home when I want with our kid, and be able to travel the world if we want as a family. I think it's good. But yeah, we don't have millions in the bank per se.
You've just hit the nail on the head totally. I think so many people listening to this will probably think, yeah, okay, right, I agree with a lot of what he said, or I don't agree with a lot of what he said, but the bit then that what you said at the end is we absolutely all have a choice in life, and life is far too short, isn't it?
That's kind of my take on it. I think I could get another job, but that's why what I'm trying to do is grow the coaching business, so there is something there that's still within the sport. Ideally, what's going to happen, hopefully, the grand vision of mine is to get better at racing to where I can cut back on the athletes coaching and just kind of have the coaching business established. So cut back on the athletes, get more money from racing, focus more on racing. But in the meantime, you have to have some source of income that keeps everybody happy. So yeah, it's I hope the sport does better, and I think hopefully it will with Wanda coming in. But at the end of the day, the pros are just a line item, in my opinion, for them, and we aren't necessarily the focus, which is a shame.
You're listening to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast with tgstore.co.uk, the home of Gore bikewear, Gore running wear, and Aquasphere wetsuits. tgstore.co.uk offers lifetime cover for Gore-Tex fabric. They'll repair your garment free of charge if you return it to them. That's the TG Store promise.
So there you have it, the lovely Brad Williams. Brad, really, really enjoyed chatting to him. Really lovely guy. And I think so honest and open, Rob, to give such a different...
Put the numbers out there.
Yeah, and to just be so honest about it, and as he was saying about... He hasn't gone for the easy choice. Being a pro triathlete when you're not the likes of Jan Frodeno, it is tough. But explaining...
No, I think it's going to raise a lot of eyebrows amongst people who... I know there are a lot of guys out there who kind of secretly dream about racing pro. And the reality of it is not, I just train all day long and get paid loads of money by companies to do so. It's as hard a job as any job, and probably harder because you're relying on prize money to actually make your living and other things. I think the amount of coaching that he does and the proportion of his income that comes from doing stuff that isn't actually winning races is quite eyebrow raising, isn't it?
Totally. And the comments he was saying about not even getting paid for months from races.
Yeah.
It makes me a bit sick, really.
It's hard, isn't it?
Like if we were at work and then if you're working. You know you're going to get that paycheck at the end of the month, and you've put the work in at a race. They should at least be rewarding you for doing that and actually getting their arse.
How hard is it to have the checkbook at the finish line?
Totally. It's shocking that races can go on, and then you're expecting prize money, they advertise prize money, then they don't do anything about it. It's bad.
You get on them, Helen. You tell them.
So there we go. Brad Williams, you're a star. Thank you so much for coming on. Great insight into life as a pro. So Rob, coming up this week, big week. It's Challenge Roth.
Yeah, Challenge Roth. How exciting.
It is. And Daniela Reef, it has been, it's out there. She is going to be trying to break Chrissy Wellington's world record. The course is different this year though, Rob. So I guess any result from this year, anyone who wins.
Is it just the run course that's different? The bike course is the same, right?
Yeah.
But they've made the run course a little bit simpler.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
So I don't think time-wise it's going to hugely impact on how fast the course is. I think it might make it a bit more spectator-friendly.
Yeah.
Or maybe it will. I don't know.
Exactly. So that's the point. So anyone who wins this year will get a new course record, so to speak, won't they? Because it's a new course.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe they won't advertise it like that.
Well, but it was interesting because Daniela Reef's coach, Brett Sutton, has put a blog post up about about this whole going for records thing. So check it out. Definitely check it out. And Chrissy is going to be there in Roth. All the press releases are saying to see Daniela break the record, but
we'll see. I think
we will see.
We will see. It's a pretty hard mark, isn't it? Is it 8:17?
I want to say 8
from memory.
16.
8:16. That's fast, isn't it?
It might be 8:18. I mean,
it's 17 or 18 or 19 for sure. Yeah, but it's the real deal. That course record. Imagine how Daniela Ryf is facing mentally, sitting at home, knowing she's got to go out and do that on her own.
Yeah, 8:18:13.
There we go. We weren't far off. We give ourselves a pat on the back for that, can't we?
Yeah. She was 4 minutes off it last year, wasn't she, Daniela Ryf?
Yeah. So we will see.
And records are there. Yeah, a lot of talk. Don't know. Records are there to be broken.
Yeah, that's right. It'd be good to see. I'm excited for it. Cool. So, well, that's pretty much it for this week's show, isn't it?
I think it is, Rob. I think that is going to be it. It's going to be, life's busy life today, isn't it?
It sure is. So tune in next week for the results of Challenge Roth. Well done if you've raced this weekend. It's an interesting point in the calendar now where I think around this month people's A races are done and gone. And so the challenge is, do not allow yourself to succumb to the Ironman or 70.3 blues. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go out and enter another race straight away, but have something else on the calendar to do, whether it's you decide you want to go skydiving or water skiing or whatever. You can't just have a blank calendar for the rest of the year, because your brain, that's been completely focused on doing these big races for probably the best part of 12 months, maybe longer, will start to go nuts, and you'll have some kind of, I don't know, it's weird, isn't it, Hels? It's like some kind of withdrawal symptoms from thinking about a big goal that's been on for ages.
Yeah,
so
my top tip, just start planning an epic ride through Italy.
Have something else on, even if it's just a family holiday to go away with the family and hang out and refresh and take some time off from the process of thinking about training. Even if you just get yourself out there and keep moving every day once your legs have recovered, but have something else on your agenda mentally and keep yourself moving. And my other tip is to have a little bit of a support system around you of other people you can talk to about this, whether it's in real life at your tri club or online on a forum on Facebook or wherever. Have people to talk to about this, because lots of people will be going through this kind of post-Ironman blues. So best of luck to you, and let us know how you've got on with your races. We love to hear about how you guys have got on. Do you know what, Hels? I'm going to give a shout out here to a guy called AJ Lines. His daughter sent me a message to say he was racing Ironman Austria, and would I do a little Facebook video for him to give him a pat on the back on race morning, because he's a listener of the show, and he's going to be featured on one of these Ironman Road to Kona shows apparently. So he said he's a big fan of the show, big listener. Would you mind just doing a good luck message to him? So I thought, got no problem with doing that. 20 seconds and banged out a video over Facebook for him. So I haven't seen the results yet. Hope you did well, mate. And to everyone else who's raced, well done to you as well.
Ace. And if you're currently entering taper for Ironman UK, don't panic. Listen back to last week's show with Evie, the psychologist. I think is a good plan. And also, if you are doing long course Wales this upcoming weekend, then I might see you there. I am going to be in Race Force kit on the bike, definitely, unless it's raining, in which case I'll have a Gore-Tex jacket on. But I will be there in Race
Say
Force
hello to
kit.
Hels.
So yeah, look out and have fun.
Good. Well, I hope you have a great weekend. All right, everyone. Thanks very much for listening. You've been listening to the Oxygenaddict Triathlon Podcast. I'm Coach Rob Wilby.
I'm Helen Murray.
And until next week, have a great training and racing week. Look after yourselves, and we'll speak to you again soon. See ya.